Welcome to the latest episode of the Beyond the Numbers podcast. Today's guest is Sophie Brown. Sophie, would you mind introducing yourself for anybody that doesn't know who you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So my name is Sophie Brown. My background is many years in sales, dropped out of university. I then appeared on quite a large television program, Married at First Sight, you might have heard of it. And since then, I've progressed my career, huge advocate for women in sales. I do lots of public speaking, lots of presenting, some sports presenting as well. And yeah.
That was a very good intro. So to get straight back we're going to go straight to the beginning a little bit because I do have one question in mind that I've not asked you behind the scenes yet. Is what brought you to Manchester?
I was headhunted for a role here. So I was 21. I dropped out of university and it came at the perfect time. I thought, what an amazing thing. It's kind of like my version of university. I'll move to a big city and moved here, didn't know anyone, literally found a girl on spare room, Airbnb'd the first few nights of my new job and moved here. And the job wasn't even what I thought it was, but it worked out in the end. Been here ever since.
So that's a pretty big move at 21. Like, what was you like as a person then? Was you pretty confident? Was you ambitious? Was that terrifying at the time, or was you just kind of taking it in your stride?
I feel like I've always had this kind of like air of confidence within myself. Like I've always pushed myself to do the things that I've wanted to do, especially in my career. I mean, dropping out of university was a big decision. I was supported by family, but some other people were like, what the heck are you doing? This is mental, stay in university. But I just knew I wanted to. My father worked for himself. I used to go on sales calls with him when I was a kid. He's an antiques dealer. And I was just like, right, I want to get out into the big world of work. So I think I was probably even more tenacious and ambitious then. So I had that personality trait back then when I was a teenager.
So to go back further then, so you just mentioned your dad was an antiques dealer.
Yeah.
So do you reckon that's maybe where you started to get some of your skill sets that you've maybe built now? Was you quite involved in that world and going to shows with him, etc.?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, looking back, I think he instilled that confidence in me. Probably like almost forced me to do it. He would put me in positions where like I'd have to speak to new people and he'd kind of give me that confidence. But yeah, I used to go on calls with him. I used to listen to what he was saying. I mean, his knowledge is incredible. And he's a wheeler dealer. He's from London and yeah, he's always worked for himself since he was really young. So I think I picked that up from a really young age.
And for a lot of your career, you've been in a male-dominated industry. Was the antiques industry similar?
Um, Good question. I feel like it's probably more male dominated in the antiques industry. There's less of them though, I'd say.
Yeah, yeah. So you've moved to Manchester. What did that first few weeks look like? Because it must have been pretty scary, really. New city, new job, etc., etc. How did that go?
Yeah, I mean, it was a good type of scary. Like, I think there's things that are outside your comfort zone which are uncomfortable, but then there are things that you do which are like, I don't know, I've always enjoyed doing scary things, but it was difficult because I'd been an account manager for 2 years before. So I thought I was going into this sort of account management role. That's what it was sold as. What it was lead generation. I was literally just picking up the phone and making calls. And they kind of put everyone into that team to like prove themselves basically. So I thought, oh shit, I've effed up here. This is not what I thought I was coming into. So the first few weeks were pretty hard. I was like, what have I done? I had a great time though. The girl I was living with and the flat and everything. I mean, it was like this whole new world. Like I was 21, living in Manchester, living in this incredible city, in this lovely flat. And I was like, make it work. And I had to as well. There was no other option. It was like, I've got to prove to everyone that I made the right decision.
Was people worried around you about this move? Was this a bit random, or was it something they would have expected you to do?
I think close family, like my parents, were super supportive. My dad always wanted me to go out and see the world or do different things and go and work in different places. So I think they were quite happy to see me. My mum probably a little bit concerned, but I just wanted that change. And all my friends were at university. So I thought, well, this is my chance to kind of go and live somewhere and have fun.
And how did that go then? So obviously you've been headhunted by this company. To be headhunted, it must be a pretty big company. So how did that go then? How long was you there for? Did you manage to work your way up? How did that first stage of your career go?
Yeah, so it was the CEO that scouted me through LinkedIn, gave me a call from the slopes in Verbier, which was a bit mental. And I was like, this is amazing. I actually did speak to my cousin and I remember her saying, is this too good to be true? This sounds a bit...
Let me just jump in. Why do you think you got headhunted at this point? Because you jumped out of uni. What would you have had on your LinkedIn at that point? Because you was already working, so you was already kind of creating value. Would it have been? Was you kind of putting out content at the time, or was the place that you're working kind of quite respected? Was you already doing sales, etc., etc.?
It's a really good point. I think I was probably reasonably active on LinkedIn. I mean, I was only a couple of years into my career, so I don't really know what drew them in. I mean, it was initially to be their PA. So, and I lived in Cheltenham, so I don't fully know how they found me from Manchester, but they did. And
we're obviously looking for a certain type of person with a big personality that knows
Yeah.
going to kind of, for sales, clearly, especially that type of sales, lead generation, you need to have a good personality. You can take rejection, you can keep going, you've got perseverance, etc., etc.
I did the lead generation role for 6 months. And that's kind of like, some people were in that team longer. If you were in that team over a year, things have gone terribly wrong. To last that long in that team was quite a feat as well, because nobody wants to go in the morning and make calls all day. Like, it's not a fun thing to do. But at that age, you're earning money, you're making money per lead, you know what you're aiming for, and you're basically going to go into sales or account management. And for me, I was more of and always have been, still am, consultative seller. So I wanted to go into account management. So you had new business account management. So I kind of set my sights on that. There was a woman, Josie. She was amazing. She was brilliant at what she did. I used to listen to her calls on the way back to Cheltenham. So I used to drive back to Cheltenham from Manchester, see my family. I used to play her calls in the car and listen to them so that I could learn.
So you're pretty dedicated even at that stage.
Yeah.
Like, to want to learn and listen to calls. Let's be honest, it's pretty boring. So if you're willing to do that, clearly that was one of the key reasons why you kind of rose to the top in that field. And then what was your next promotion after that?
So went into account management, and I remember I wasn't long started, and they basically put out a thing. They needed a team leader, and I knew I wanted that role at some point, so I went for that. Obviously, I was like underqualified and brand new, but the next time they needed a team leader, they called me first. So it's always good to just go for it anyway, which I found. About a month into starting to be an account manager, the whole data center went down. Someone went through the wire, literally, I can't remember what with. It was mental. The whole thing went down. Every single customer was down, which as a hosting provider, it's like if Amazon went down or Google went down. I mean, it was absolutely mental. I'd been there a month, I had all these new clients, literally, and I had no idea what to do. We were having like our clients, I feel like Zook and stuff was a client. We were having food brought in. We were literally like sat at our desk. It was mental, but it was a crazy experience. And then, yeah, moved into team manager role, moved into like a senior account manager role. And then from there, I moved into like a partner manager role for the Southwest, which I did back down in Cheltenham. So I moved my way up through like different roles, and I was there over 3 years. So it was like a steady increase. It was a good trajectory, and it kind of like massively built my confidence. They were good at internally promoting, like from within, which was good.
And this stage you've got to here, was this kind of part of the plan when you maybe dropped out of uni, or have you completely just gone into a different field than what you was expecting?
I think it was part of the plan, because I was like, right, if I've got something, I'm not super intelligent, but I've got a bit of business acumen. I can speak to people, and I kind of, that's why I geared towards sales, and I think that's why lots of people kind of go in that direction, because it's a skill set that if you're good at it, you're great at it, and you can build on it as well. And yeah, I just knew that I might be all right at it. But I think once I moved to Manchester, that was like the goal one. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm moving, I'm living in this amazing city. And then as I started to progress through the company, yeah, that was a really amazing few years, I think, because I was really young. I was earning all right money, and I was actually doing well in my career. So it was like this, yeah, the whole thing was kind of working for me. And exactly that. I always had this goal in my head when I dropped out of uni. I was like, I must now do better than everybody else around me that stayed at university. And that was always in my brain.
So where did you go from there then? So obviously you've worked your way up, you've done really, really well. Where was the next step after that? What kind of a role did you go into from there?
Well, I decided to quit at the worst possible time, just before COVID. And then when they backtracked the furlough, I'd left like 2 weeks before that. So I wasn't even applicable for any of that. But I wanted to leave and find something new. I'd done over 3 years. I was like, put a good stint in. I want to find something else. I ended up getting a sales job, actually, which was selling legal software, which in COVID, it was great. I was doing demonstrations for my laptop, making really good money. I really enjoyed the company. They looked after us. And then, yeah, I did that for a while. And then it was the Hut Group that were interested in having me as their partner manager. So I went and worked there.
And where would they have been based at the time?
They were moving over. So
to the airport?
Yeah, so they were in their building prior to that, which was quite an old building. And then they moved into brand spanking new, and they've got the studios there, which were incredible. But we moved into this new building, moved into this partner manager role within THG Ingenuity in cloud services. So still within this kind of like tech world that I was in.
And how did you find it working there? Was that, because that's another huge company working for, I guess you were a bit more prepared for it this time, and how did that go?
A little bit. I mean, I think UK Fast was what? Oh gosh, maybe about 300 people. and then the Hut Group is like 9,000. I think it's more than that now. So it's a big jump, which is kind of crazy. But because we were within cloud services, it was like not the black sheep of the business, but it operated in its own entity a little bit, which I quite enjoyed. I was quite autonomous with what I did. I really got on with my boss, who was a brilliant manager, so that was great. But we kind of operated in our own little, I think the main part of THG operates quite different with beauty and like My Protein and things like that. So we were kind of out the craziness, and like Black Friday and things like that. We were out the craziness of that. So it was quite good. It meant that I could still kind of like do some personal development. But it was tricky. I mean, working in a business of that size there's difficulties in like different areas.
So I don't know if this is on purpose, but you now are starting to specialise in not only sales, but it's the second role where you're working in tech as well, isn't it? So how did you find that? Was you now starting to find your niche, would you say?
I think so. I mean, if you pick up so much knowledge. I mean, even though I was a salesperson and it was commercial, sat around, the solution architects, the engineers and everything every single day, I picked up so much information. So I was really knowledgeable by that point. And especially at the Hut Group, I was trying to understand our proposition, and it was a bit of everything. So I was like trying to take on all of this new information. And yeah, so I think I kind of found my place within tech. Obviously, it's kind of always adapting. You're kind of at the forefront of everything. Like it's a good industry to be in because it's exciting and it's always developing. But I did enjoy it. I wasn't like, it didn't set my world on fire. I wasn't like, oh my God, servers, this is where I want to be. But it was being able to speak to people, and it was like having those connections and building, being a consultative seller and offering someone's solution and them taking it. And like, obviously you do sales because you want those wins, and that feeling is like an incredible feeling. I mean, everyone chases that high. And once you have it, I'd had that since I was 18, even younger. I mean, I used to work at Ernest Jones, the jeweler, and I left university because I was like, I can sell. Like, I loved it. I loved speaking to people. I loved selling them things. I would get commission. It was tiny percentage. It was a Christmas job. But that feeling doesn't go away. Well, you're always like yearning for it in sales.
Yeah, and I like to do it sometimes because I always like to look back at, as I touched on before, with antiques, where it really comes from. I think where sometimes people think their skill sets come from is when their career started, but often for me, I've said it before, where I feel like my skills started to be built on car boot sales.
Yeah.
It's very similar to antiques, where
we used to do car boot sales.
And
6
that's
o'clock
the thing,
in the morning on a Sunday.
Exactly. And that buzz that you get now in sales will be exactly the same as maybe in a car boot sale, or where you've maybe assisted your dad getting a deal, and that reassurance and that positive feedback is probably where that buzz first started. So I know that at some point in your journey with the Hut Group was when you had an opportunity to go into a TV show, which we will have to dip into a little bit. So, well, how did that look, and what was the early stages of when you knew that was going to be an opportunity?
Yeah, so I applied. I sort of applied for the year before. It was when it was COVID, and I thought, what an incredible opportunity, number one. And number two, I'd been single for a while. I'd had one long-term relationship when I was like a teenager. So it'd been a while. I was living my best life in Manchester. But I was like, I'd love to settle down. The word marriage and kind of that commitment doesn't scare me if it's the right person. So I applied, and I didn't hear anything for a long time. And then I got a message from them. I think it was about the October time. And the process started, and I started having these calls, and it was weird. I just had this feeling in my head that it was going quite well. I mean, they can't really tell you that much. The thing with these shows is it's not like, say, a Love Island where you go on as an individual. They have to match you. You have to be paired up. So they kept saying, we love you. You're one of our favourites, blah, blah, blah. But if we can't find you someone, unfortunately, you're not going to make it on the show. So it was always at the back of my mind. I actually was offered a job in London during that time to go run a division of a tech company that was like branching out. It was to go be like the MD, build out like all of their processes and basically set it up and run it. And I was 25 at the time, and it was an amazing opportunity. But they offered me equity. They were going to pay 6 months of my rent in London and everything, and I kind of wanted to do the London thing, but something at the back of my head was like, number one, again, sounds too good to be true, and then I also was like, I think I'm going to get on this show. I think that I am. And I ended up staying with the Hut Group, and then I ended up getting on the show, and they told me in maybe the February, and then you start filming in beginning of March.
Right, so it came around pretty quick, yeah.
Yeah.
And I imagine you had to take some time off work and things like that, and yeah. So when you look back at the person that was about to go onto this show, how do you feel about that person? Do you think, what was she doing? Do you think he wasn't ready for that, or you didn't need to do this, or do you think he was in the right place at the right time to do that?
I live with no regrets. Like, obviously, you look back at some things and you think, gosh, why did I do that? But No, I had 5 months to think about it and overthink about it as well. I mean, it was taking over my life, like, am I literally going to be getting married to someone? Is my life going to be filmed on television? What is the repercussions of that? What's it going to be like out the other side? So I think I fully got to consider it in my head. I've always gone for things. Like, I've literally always gone for things. And this was another one of those. And I was like, right, you're in it now. I remember telling my parents, and my dad basically said, what's the reason that you're doing this? Like, I support you, but just what do you want to do this for? And what do you want to get out of it? And I just had it in my head, and it was something that I wanted to do. And I don't look back at I look back and think, gosh, you were younger and, in a different place and things like that. But I've always been quite mature in the way that I approach things. I never wanted it to affect my career. That was one thing I wanted to be careful of. And yeah, I think there's a lot of things I wish I knew then. Television is mental. I mean, I think if you have any experience with television, you have such an advantage. I was literally blind to it all. So naive.
Do you think that's a big plus for a television company, finding people that are maybe quite naive to it to make a good show?
I think so. I think if someone's even done a little bit of television, then they understand how it works, at least to some extent. Like, me and my family joked for a long time after that it like ruined television for us, because we just know how everything works. And, there's still magic in it, but I don't think people realise quite how, and I won't say constructed, or it's not scripted, because people ask me that. It's not at all. It's people's real lives, but, it's an angle through a television show. I mean, there's story writers and everything that are on set all the time. So it's, they're incredibly clever with the way they do things. It's entertainment, it's reality, and that's what people want, isn't it? They want to watch a good show, but when you apply for it, you forget that you are the good show. That's me. I'm the one that's going to be putting on a show. But yeah.
So obviously, I know it'll have been a stringent process, and there've been ups and downs, and for anyone that watches it will roughly know the kind of thing that happens on the show.
Yeah.
If we focus on yourself, what lessons would you have learned? What do you think you learned about yourself while you was on it? Because I imagine you kind of grown up pretty quick, and you've it's almost like a crash course in self-development, I imagine. What would you say you've learned?
It is. I mean, it's the most intense process. I'd never lived with like a guy before or anything, or like a boyfriend. So that was really intense. You're filmed a lot of the time. Your schedules are mental. At that time, I didn't know that I had ADHD, but I'd like put a referral in, and we were filming for like 12, 14, 16 hours some days. And like, I was really struggling. Like, the commitment ceremony days, you sit in a seat for hours and hours and hours. It's mental. So it was quite difficult. And I think, I learned a lot about myself. I think it was probably after the show actually came out, dealing with the media and stuff like that. I think I learned a lot from that, because no one can prepare you. But yeah, I think, I learned a lot of things. I think my confidence grew, like my resilience. Like, I always say that I'm pretty resilient because I've just had to be so resilient because of some of the stuff that's happened. But yeah, I mean, to be put in that situation, come out the other side, and then kind of deal with the aftermath of that, you do grow and develop as a person. Like, there's no other option, really.
I guess one thing that's quite tough, and I don't know if I'm wrong here, but you film and then it comes out later, and you're back to living your normal life, I imagine. So that must be quite tough, where it's going out and you're almost thinking, don't judge me on that because next week's about to come out. And where a lot of, say, reality shows, you're on it while it's being shown, so you can kind of be oblivious to it. I imagine it's quite hard if you're here ready to kind of listen to everything being said and all the reactions.
I always say this. I'm like, at least on Love Island, you're out having a jolly on a holiday in the sun. I had to sit at home. There's tears rolling down my face, watching the TV, like, looking at everything. I was so bad. I was so curious. Like, I didn't want to see what people said, but I absolutely did. I was on Reddit looking at, like, threads about myself.
I think it's human to love, no matter whether it's good or bad, when people are speaking about you, you want to know what's being said, don't you? It's just human. So if we go back to your career then, how long was it before? Well, not how long was it before, but when the dust settled, what happened then? So did you manage to go back to your original job, and how did that go?
Yeah, so I was lucky. I was in a position where they offered me like unpaid leave while I filmed, which was incredible. I wasn't sure if they were going to do that. A lot of people don't get that opportunity. They have to leave their jobs, which I understand. But after we finished filming, I think I had maybe a week or two. That was it. And then I went back to work. The time in between the filming and then when it came out on television was very difficult because I'd been in this bubble. I'd been filming and then I went back to work. It was really, really tough.
That must be really tough, yeah.
Yeah, it was I remember, and this wasn't like work's fault, but it was just a mental thing. I sat down on my first day, I just cried my eyes out. It was you're literally in this bubble where everything's done for you. You know, we had no phones or anything like that. Like, you're told where you're going all the time. All your activities are planned. It's the weirdest thing. And then you go back to normal life and you're expected to just function again in quite like a high intensity job that I had as well, where I had to perform. You know,
Yeah.
any sales role, I also still had to perform, which was another added pressure on top of that. But yeah, I ended up going back to a promotion, going back to a pay rise. And I did that for as long as I kind of humanly could before it wasn't plausible to be able to kind of like live this life after the show and have a job that was quite high intensity.
And I suppose from their point of view, they're thinking we've already given you unpaid leave, so as soon as you get back, you need to really get cracking on now. So, if you're being really honest, when you went back to work, was there a part of you that think, like, I bet that you were split in two a little bit, like, can't wait to get back to some normality and get back on with your career because you were doing very, very well and you enjoy it. But I bet there was another part of you that thought, I'm not sure if I want to go back to work yet, and then maybe there's an opportunity for me to not have to go back to a normal job again.
Yeah, I think definitely. It was like a bit of a mental battlefield. But I remember thinking at the time, I'm earning money. I was on a good salary, good wage. And I kind of crave that normality. Like, my brain as well, the way I work, like I do need that routine. Otherwise, I'll like lose the plot a bit. So that helped me. A lot of the other people that had come off the show had gone back to no work, and the show hadn't come out yet. So all those amazing things that could potentially happen at the end of the rainbow, we haven't even got there yet. We don't even know how we've come across on screen. And it helped distract me, I think, from, in 4 months' time, you know, millions of people are going to watch you on television. You have no idea how you're going to come across. So it was positive in loads of ways, but it was really blooming hard to have all of this mental stuff. I also wasn't supposed to talk about it, so I couldn't tell anyone. So everyone was like, "Where have you been?" And I was like, "Ah." A lot of people did kind of guess, but yeah, it was really tricky. I think it was positive in a lot of the ways, though, or I'd have been just sat at home thinking about it.
Yeah, I suppose it's better to keep yourself busy because I'm sure you kind of, one of the things that's on your mind is you're wondering about how you're going to come across, like you said, because I imagine it can go many different ways. Did you come out of there with peace of mind thinking that you're going to come across pretty well, would you say?
Overall, I think there were moments where I thought, how could that be interpreted? But I went in there and I was as real as I could be. I had an authentic relationship. The person that I was with, we had something real. It was up and down and it was difficult, but it was definitely real. It wasn't some showmance or, you know, that kind of thing. So I knew that, and I knew it had been really hard. Like, and I thought, if it's been hard, it's been real. So I thought, I hope that I do come across authentically myself. I also just couldn't think about it too much because there's literally nothing you can do at that point.
Yeah, and then so if we go back to the Hook Group, you returned, you've gone back to a job, you've got a promotion, you're doing really, really well. Quick one. So I'm aware quite a few of you watching the podcast don't have a clue what I do. I run Sales Hero, and Sales Hero is a business that helps small businesses get more from the sales processes. We help you to make more money, buy much more of your time back, and just simply fall in love with your businesses again. We have free services. We do consulting where we'll simply help you to build a new process. We do done with you, which will allow us to scrap what you're currently doing, build a whole new sales process and help you to run that going forward, or simply done for you, which is where we will come in, scrap your process, build a new one, and then run it for you. All three of them allow you to make more money, get more time back, and fall in love with your business again, and allow you to get back to doing what you're the best at, which is probably the thing that you started the business for in the first place. Now back to the episode. When was the next day? Like, I suppose we probably should cover what it was like when it came out. Actually, so was you still in this job when it all came out? The filming, the show.
Yeah, so I spoke to, I had a couple of chats with HR and they were lovely. They were like, any issues, let us know. And then it started to come out on television. The first episode I was really, really upset and unhappy with. Right. I felt like I'd been shown in a bit of a different light. And that was on the Thursday and I had to wait till the Monday for the next one to come out. And I remember being so embarrassed because of work. I remember thinking, I can't talk to anyone. I can't go in there. It wasn't as bad as I thought, obviously, from other people's perspective. And I had so many people message and say, look, we know that's not you and all of this. So it was okay. But that time was really hard. There was one time I was in one of our like little offices and I remember this person walked past in the office like with their phone, like filming me. And I remember that feeling really weird. And I thought, oh, can I come into the office anymore? It's all getting a bit much. So they were very flexible. Like I did a lot of working from home, but yeah, that time was tricky. It coming out every night, the adrenaline as well. 9 till 10 o'clock, I'm watching the show. 10 till whatever time, I'm on a high. I'm looking at all the, Twitter comments. I'm like speaking to my friends. I'm hundreds, thousands of DMs, thousands. And I had so many people, which was incredible, interested in the women in tech, the career thing, the sales thing, all of that. And that was amazing. That was brilliant. So I had so many messages to reply to about that as well.
And did you reply to them all, or was you someone that kind of just shut off a little bit?
No, I replied to everyone. I mean, there'll be ones that slip through the cracks, like certain episodes, you just get absolutely inundated. But overall, I've always tried to get back to people. That's always been a prerogative, because these people are reaching out to me, and especially if it's something positive. And also, I went on the show to talk about my career and being a woman in tech and being in a male-dominated industry and kind of like spreading that message. So if then people are replying to that and they're relating to that, I didn't want to just leave them in the lurch and leave them in the dark. I wanted to give them my advice or like have a chat with them. It was nice to hear other people's perspectives.
And when would you say then that in your head that started to pass a little bit and you were back to the person that you was, back on track, I suppose, career-wise, because you're never going to go back to the person you was. You've learnt loads more. You've developed loads more. When would you say that I'm actually now just fully focused on my career again?
Now, like today.
Really?
It's taken that long.
Yeah.
I think I had, I was going to say turbulent. It's not really the word. It was like 2 years of incredible experiences. I did some amazing stuff. I also do a bit of like presenting and things like that. And I absolutely love that. But I did some kind of consultancy freelance work, which was fine. But I think it's not until now that I've started a new job recently where I fully feel back in my zone. And it has. I think it took the wind out of me a bit. It definitely did. It was like the show was really difficult for me, knocked my confidence a lot. And then not being at my A game in work as well knocked me as well. So I think genuinely it's only recently that I've like, you always have, you never have everything, do you? Like that's not what life is, unfortunately. But I've always felt like in the last couple of years, I've almost had everything, like whether it be the relationship or whether it be work or whether it be social or whatever. And touch wood, I kind of feel at the moment that, I mean, it's a juggle. It's a real juggle, but I'm kind of at the point now where it's okay.
So if you tell us a little bit more about what you're doing right now, because obviously you're in a really good place at the minute with work and your career. What is your role right now?
So I'm Director of Growth and Partnerships for Talentia Group. And within that, they've got Dovetail and Slate and Innertech partners. Dovetail and Slate is the largest provider of talent recruitment, so placing people into further education. So teachers, lecturers, principals, everything, basically. I'm not recruiting myself. Kind of funny because I've always been asked to be a recruiter. Anybody that's a salesperson gets asked all the time. Every recruiter I've spoken to, oh, no, we don't have anything, but would you like to come work for us? And I've stayed away from it. But I had a chat with the CEO. Again, I'm always quite creative with the way I do things. I needed to find a role, and I was getting to the point where, right, I need to put myself out there. I put a post out on LinkedIn, and that's how he responded to me. He responded on message, and we started speaking. So, yeah.
So what's your day-to-day look like at the minute then? If you're not directly recruiting people, what would you say your role is at the moment? I know obviously the title, but what does that look like?
So, gosh, yeah. I mean, I've just started-ish. I'm like a month in. So I've been learning a lot at the moment, been sort of shadowing the CEO and been going out on meetings. But my role is that it's to grow the business, and it's to partner with, the clients that we have. But we can grow that in any different way. So the other day I was recording podcasts because we record podcasts in the business. I'll be out on client visits. I'll be at events, conferences. I'm helping them build a sales process, so implementing a sales process, because from a new business perspective, what I do is completely different than the consultants do every day, and the systems they have are incredible, but that doesn't work for me. I can't look at my sales pipeline and kind of see where things are up to. So I'm implementing a lot of processes, onboarding processes, loads of different things. It's literally super diverse. Like my days at the moment, my brain needs that. I love it. I mean, I'm not going to lie. 4 weeks ago, I was like able to do whatever I wanted and pick up jobs when I wanted them, and I could do whatever. Now I'm doing 4 intense days, and like my body can feel it definitely, but my brain is like, oh, I feel like it loves it.
It was interesting though the company, because I think a lot of people will be aware that there maybe is a lot less people going into teaching and things like that. So just to give the company a little bit of a shout out, what's the actual mission and where are they getting people from? And what's the actual problem?
Sure. So they're a B Corp as well. So they're doing amazing things. But within education especially, I mean, they offer a load of consultancy. So they do a lot around not just placing people, but improving hiring processes within colleges. Because in these places, you know, it's hard to attract the talent sometimes and then to get them to stay. So we do a lot around, you know, sponsorships of like, we do a lot with students. We even do like anti-gambling and things like that, and go in and do talks. The CEO and I, we did a business talk recently where we went and talked about our journeys and things like that. So there's a lot of that going on. But it's interesting. I didn't realize this, but so many people now will be on trade. They'll be like a carpenter or a brickie or electrician. A lot of these people are moving from their professions into an education environment. So they're going to teach, which I think is really cool. I didn't know that was a thing. But essentially, it's just to make you know, education a better place. The most important thing is the students, and having someone in front of them there's a lot of like temporary work with teaching, and it means that students will then not have someone in their classroom, which is, you know, the worst thing in the world. So it's making sure that they've got the right people there that will stay, and building a great culture for the colleges themselves.
So if we go back to you then, so you've obviously been on quite a journey so far of your career already, with a little bit of TV in between, which obviously have brought different skills. So as we speak to you today, what would you say your top 3 skills are?
Oh gosh,
in the workplace,
in the workplace,
or outside the workplace, whatever you want to say.
I'm one of those people. I'm like the same in and outside work. Like it's just fluid. I think a lot of like commercial salespeople are. I think, well, I suppose probably what I said before. Well, my confidence, I think, is important, because even if I'm not feeling it, I put that front on, and that's what makes shit happen. Like you have to put yourself out there. My resilience, I do think, entering a sales role now, like 10 years later than when I started, everything's different. I don't care if you say no to me. That's fine. I don't really want to work with you either, potentially. You know, it gives you a lot more, I don't know, like grounding, and you just don't care as much. It's great. Confidence, resilience. What could be the third one? I think just ambition, like that's still there. I think I need to tap into it more. I think I've like missed it a little bit, because I did lose my confidence a bit over the last couple of years. But now I'm back in this kind of, you know, environment. It gives me a real boost. So I think being ambitious, my ambition.
That's good. And I think you definitely missed some form of sales on there as well, or even communication, or people skills. Clearly that's something you're good at as well. And as far as your career then going forward, what would you like to get out of it? Obviously, at the minute you're in a role that really excites you, and I'm sure short term everything is about that, and I'm not saying long term should be without that. But what would you like to get out of your career? What would be success to you?
I think I'm in that learning period again, and that's what I wanted and needed. So that's exciting. I'm like learning every day about businesses, how they operate, and kind of still trying to move my way up. I still want to be a massive advocate for, you know, females in male-dominated industries. Previously, it was more aligned to tech because I was more in tech, but it's always been quite commercial. But I think moving forward, I'd love to do more around women in sales. I mean, I think I read a stat the other day. It's like 21% of sales leaders are female. So it's not many, basically. So it would be great to have a voice out there that kind of shows, you know, this is what I've done. This is how I've got there. My journey's been nothing but normal. And I've had my ups and downs, but, you know, you can get to that point too, or assist people and do a lot more public speaking and things around that. But I'd love to potentially do more around workshops and things like that with you know, women in sales, and build confidence and personal branding and that kind of thing.
Why do you think there's not that many women in sales?
It might boil down to more of a personality thing. I mean, I asked ChatGPT the other day, what does the director of growth and partnerships look like? And it threw up a male. Now, statistically, obviously, that is factually correct, because like I just mentioned, there's less female sales leaders and that kind of thing. But I just think it's a bit of an attitude thing. And I think that's where like the empowering voices come from. And you've already had, you know, empowering voices that are females on your podcast. But if a male sees like a job description on LinkedIn, if they've got 60% of the qualifications, they'll go for it. For a female to go for it, they have to see 100%. They have to see that they're going to hit all of those things. It's an attitude thing. It's a confidence thing. And I think that's where it boils down to, is like giving younger females that confidence to be like, you can do it. You are more than capable of doing it. I think it's just having someone around you that gives you that push.
Yeah, I think as well. I mean, we've had another guest on, Becky, who's doing a lot in the space and making some big impacts. But also, I think a lot of people have misconceptions around the word sales, don't they? What it looks like and what it means, and it's a dirty word and it's tricking people. And I think maybe it's the misconception of sales is less attractive to women than men. Whereas if people actually knew what it was and what it looks like, and it's actually just relationship building, and it's helping people, and it's helping people come and see your vision, and it's all positive stuff, it might be more attractive.
Yeah, I think so. I think the communication thing, you can have a skill set that's well suited to sales. I think a lot of people will look at salesmen and they'll think it's like, a guy that drives a nice car with a Rolex on his wrist and, a wheeler dealer and a bit of a Jack the Lad and, gift of the gab. But if you are good at speaking to people, you're more than likely good, a good salesperson. But it's just tapping into that. But you're right. It's probably like changing that stigma a little bit. It's not a dirty word. I mean, sales is like probably the most amazing skill set that you can possess because you can take that anywhere. Communication, speaking to people, it's reading people. I would say as well that I can read people quite well. It's like listening to the nuances in what people say, and that makes you a good salesperson. You're not just waiting to interrupt. You're actually listening to what they say and then building a solution based on that. And a lot of people are very good at that and they probably don't even realise.
Yeah, I mean, I always say if you're the one that can convince your friend to win a night out when they really don't want to, that's sales. And a lot of people that can do that would say they're not a salesperson. I couldn't sell, or I don't like it. Whereas really that is high level sales. I think another misconception as well is if a salesperson's good at taking things off people, for example, the money.
Yeah.
Whereas a good deal is something for me where they both win. You win, I win. We've both just done a deal. I've sold to you, but you progress and I progress.
Yeah.
Whereas I think a lot of people think if we do a deal, one of us has to lose in the deal, which isn't true at all. So if we get a little bit deeper and we go back to your experience on Married at First Sight and beyond, what would you say you've learnt about relationships, or any advice or things you maybe thought then that you wouldn't think now?
Gosh.
I know I'm putting you on the spot there, but I bet there are some things that you've learned since then.
I think no, it's a good question. It's a big one. I think I've learned so much over the years, but I don't know. One sec. That's a difficult question.
It is a difficult question. So, like, for example, I think an obvious one, which I'm not saying about you, I'm saying a lot of people, and certainly something as I've grown up, is like, the like types and things like that just become a lot less existent. I mean, I imagine when you went on the show, you would have said, I want this, I want that, I want this, I want that, and I don't know whether they give you all that or they didn't, but I bet to start you off, that is probably something that's changed since before the show.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think especially when you're young, there's a lot more kind of you do go more for like surface level things or things that you think you want. It's also you're so when you're young and you're in your early 20s or you don't know what you want. You haven't had enough life experience. I do think I've been quite good at basing more on personality. Like when I went on the show, that you do question after question after question and chat after chat about what you're looking for. And less of mine was on looks, definitely. It's more about personality. And I have always been like that. But I think I had a bit of a time as well with dating afterwards. And like this whole if you wanted to, you would kind of thing, like that does actually land. I think that I've always known if I've been dating someone, if they're not the right person, but I've buried it down. I'm like, no, especially I think my ADHD brain is like, I get really invested really quickly. And I've kind of learned to untangle that because that's a sticky situation to be in. Because you end up really liking them straight away. And then when things don't go well, eventually you think, oh my God, I didn't even like them. What was I thinking? So I've learned that over the years, I think. And now I've met someone amazing and like I knew from day one that was the right person. And genuinely, if I compare how I felt to other times, it's just not the same at all.
So I guess that's what I'll take from that a little bit is when it's right, it'll feel right. You shouldn't have to bend or change or feel a certain way that's not comfortable.
Yeah.
So I've got last two questions that I ask everybody. So you won't know what they are, but I'm going to ask them. So the first one is, what advice would you give to yourself at 18 from yourself now, looking back?
Gosh, keep doing what you're doing. Like that drive and that tenacity and ambition will take you places. And not your whole career and work life is not going to be the same as that first job that you had. And all of those things that happened and unfortunate situations and being in that male dominated environment is going to be difficult, but it's going to build your resilience like you wouldn't believe, and it's going to make everything else easier. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing. That attitude that you have is incredible, and that's what's going to make you successful.
Just to follow on from that, would you give any tips to anybody working in a male-dominated environment? And because obviously a lot of these male-dominated environments, let's be clear, in a few years they won't be. Things are changing a lot. But what advice? Because I've had guests before that have spoke about being in a male-dominated environment and really thriving, and you're thriving too. So what would you give advice to somebody that is currently in a male-dominated environment and maybe want to thrive more?
Yeah, I think seek out those that you find inspiration from, and that I'm such an advocate for like mentor programs and things like that. Whether you identify perhaps a female in your male dominated environment that you look up to, go and approach them. Everybody likes to help each other, and I'm sure they'd be more than happy to sit down, have a conversation, and kind of help you, you know, to be the best you can be in that environment. Also, find it externally, because sometimes you don't want someone in your business because it's a bit close to home. LinkedIn is amazing. You know, I've spoken to some incredible people, and I think it's just about making connections. Like I said, the reason I want to talk about it is just in the hope that someone relates to it. So if you're in that environment and you maybe need a little bit more support, go out there and find it, because it is available to you. But you're right, we're getting better, and every year that goes past, I mean, I started, 10 years ago, the landscape is entirely different. So the people you speak to, and kind of identifying those that, it doesn't have to be a female, but, if that's what you want, but someone that can help you through that.
And last question, what does retirement look like to you?
Oh.
Have you thought that far ahead?
I haven't. I'm so bad with goals and things like this. I did them with my CEO recently, and I was like, why am I struggling so much? Like, I want to achieve these amazing things, but I don't sit down and think about them. I really want a family. I really want children, and I think just having, financial freedom is different for everyone, isn't it? So it's hard to kind of put something on that, but I'd like to have. I always would like to have something in my career, whether that's I'm running my own business eventually, that fits around my family and that kind of thing. But I always need to be switched on, and I need to be kind of doing something. So yeah, building up to a point where I've got a bit of financial freedom, hopefully got a family, and live somewhere nice and have a nice life.
I've got one last question actually. Do you think you was always a city person living in the country, or would you still feel like you're a country girl now but in the city?
I love both, honestly. I'm very lucky. I go back to Cheltenham and I get to see my family, and I can go out into the countryside if I want to, and then I still love this buzz of the city. It just does something for me. I don't know, but a little bit of both, and I think if I can always maybe have a bit of both and dip in and out, that would be amazing.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for coming on. If anyone else wants to look into Sophie more, you can find all the links below the podcast, and thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much.